Hey guys, so tonight we're going to be reading chapter 4 of Rich Kid, Smart Kid, Give Your Child a Financial Head Start. And this is written by Robert T. Kiyosaki. And chapter 4 says, if you want to be rich, you must do your homework. Both my parents and Mike's parents continually reminded us to do our homework. Again, the difference was that they did not recommend the same type of homework. Have you done your homework? My mom asked. I'll do it as soon as this game is over, was my reply. You've been playing long enough. Stop playing right now and hit the books. If you don't get good grades, you won't get into college, and then you won't get a good job, she scolded. Okay, okay, I'll put the game away, but after I buy one more hotel. Listen to your mother and put that game away now. I know you love the game, but it's time to study. That was my dad's voice, and he did not sound happy. Knowing better than to ask for more time, I stopped immediately and began putting the game away. It hurt me to sweep up the little greenhouses, red hotels, and property deeds I had spent hours collecting. I was close to controlling one whole side of the board. Yet I knew my parents were right. I did have a test the next day, and I had not yet begun to study. There was a period of my life when I was utterly fascinated by the game of Monopoly. I played it regularly from the time I was 8 until I turned 14, which was when I started playing high school football. I suspected I would have kept playing Monopoly regularly if I could have found more kids my age to play the game. But by the time you're in high school, it's not the cool thing to do. Although I played the game less frequently, I never lost my love of it, and once I was old enough, I began playing the game in real life. Building blocks from my building blocks from my rich dad. After a strong and healthy self-perception, one of the most important building blocks to wealth is homework. In my previous books, I explained how I learned about money while working for my rich dad from the age of 9 into my college years. In exchange for my labor, he would spend hours teaching his son and me the ins and outs of running a business, as well as the skills needed to be an investor. There was many a Saturday I would have rather been surfing with my friends or playing some other sports, yet I found myself sitting in my rich dad's office. There was many a Saturday I would have rather been surfing with my friends or playing some other sports, yet I found myself sitting in my rich dad's office, learning from a man who would one day become one of the wealthiest private citizens in Hawaii. During one of these Saturday lessons, my rich dad asked Mike and me, do you know why I will always be richer than the people who work for me? Mike and I sat blankly for a while, searching our minds for an appropriate answer. At first, it seemed like a stupid question, but knowing Rich Dad, we knew there was something important to learn from this question. Finally, I ventured what I thought was the obvious answer. Because you make more money than they do? I said. Yeah, Mike said, nodding in agreement. After all, you own the company and you decide how much you get paid and how much they get paid. Rich Dad rocked back in his chair, grinning. Well, it is true that I decide how much everyone gets paid, but the truth is I get paid less than many of the employees who work for me. Mike and I both looked at his dad with a suspicious gaze. If you own this business, how can other people be paid more than you? Mike asked. Well, there are several reasons why, replied Rich Dad. Do you want me to tell you? Of course, Mike replied. Well, when you're starting up a business, cash is often tight, and the owner is usually the last to be paid. You mean the employees only get paid first? Asked Mike. Rich Dad nodded. That is correct. And not only do they get paid first, they often get paid more than I do when I do get paid. But why is that? I asked. Why own a business if you get paid last and get paid the least? because that is what a business owner often needs to do at first if he plans to build a successful business. That makes no sense, I replied. Tell me why you do it then. Because employees work for money and I work to build an asset, said Rich Dad. So as you build this business, your pay will go up. Mike asks. It may and it may not. I say this because I want you to know the difference between money and an asset. Rich Dad continued, I may or may not pay myself more later on, and I am not working hard for the paycheck. The reason I work hard is to build an asset that increases in value. I may someday sell this business for millions of dollars, or I may hire a president to run it for me one day, and I will go on to build another business. So, to you, building a business is building an asset, and the asset is more important to you than money. I said, doing my best to understand the distinction between money and an asset. That's right, said Rich Dad. And the second reason I get paid less is that I already have other sources of income. You mean you have money from other assets? I asked. Again, Rich Dad nodded, and that is the reason I asked you boys the question in the first place. That is why I asked you why I will always be richer than my employees. Regardless of who makes the most money in salary, I am doing my best to teach you a very important lesson. And what is the lesson? Asked Mike. The lesson is you don't get rich at work, you get rich at home, said Rich Dad strongly, making sure we did not take his words lightly. I don't understand, I commented. What do you mean you get rich at home? Well, it's at work when you earn your money, and it is at home where you decide what you are going to do with your money. And it is what you do with your money after you earn it that makes you rich or poor, replied Rich Dad. It's like homework, Mike said. Exactly, said Rich Dad. That is exactly what I call it. I call getting rich my homework. But my dad brings a lot of work home, I said almost defensively, and we're not rich. Well, your dad brings his work home, but he really does not do his homework, said Rich Dad. Just as your mom does housework, but that's it, not what I mean by homework. Or yard work, I added. Rich Dad nodded. Yes, there is a difference between yard work, the school work you bring home, the work your dad brings home from his office, and the kind of homework I am talking about. It was then my rich dad said something to me I never forgotten. The primary difference between the rich, the poor, and the middle class is what they do in their spare time. The spare time, I said in my questioning tone. What do you mean, their spare time? Rich Dad smiled at his son and me for a moment. Where do you think this restaurant business was started? He asked. Do you think that the business came out of thin air? No, said Mike. You and Mom started this business at our kitchen table. That is where all your business have been started. That's correct, said Rich Dad. Do you remember the first small store we started years ago? Mike nodded. Yes, I do, he said. Those were very tough days for the family. We had so little money. And how many stores do we have now? Said Rich Dad. We own five, Mike replied. And how many restaurants? Asked Rich Dad. We own seven, said Mike. As I sat there listening, I began to understand a few new distinctions. So the reason you earn less from this restaurant is that you have income from many other businesses. That is partly the answer, Rich Dad said with a grin. The rest of the answer is found on this Monopoly game board. Understanding the game of Monopoly is the best kind of homework you can do. Monopoly? I asked with a grin. I could still hear my mom's voice telling me to put my Monopoly game away and do my homework. What do you mean Monopoly is homework? Let me show you, said Rich Dad as he opened up the world's most familiar game. What happens when you go around Go? He asked. You collect $200, I replied. So every time you go around Go, that is like you collecting your paycheck. Is that correct? Yes. I guess so, said Mike. And to win the game, what are you supposed to do? Asked Rich Dad. You're supposed to buy real estate, I said. That's right, said Rich Dad. Buying real estate is your homework. That is what makes you rich, not your paycheck. Mike and I sat there in silence for a long period of time. Finally, I ventured a question to Rich Dad. So, are you saying a big paycheck does not make you rich? That's correct, said Rich Dad. A paycheck does not make you rich. It is what you do with the paycheck that makes your person rich, poor or middle class. I don't understand, I said. My dad is always saying that if he got a bigger pay raise, we would be rich. That is what other people think, said Rich Dad. But the reality is that the more money most people make, the further in debt they get. So they have to work harder. Why is that? I asked. It's because of what they do at home. It's what they do in their spare time, said Rich Dad. Most people have a poor plan or a poor formula for their money after they make it. So where does a person find a good formula for wealth? Mike asked. Well, one of the better formulas for wealth is found right here on the Monopoly board, Rich Dad said, pointing to the game board. What formula? I asked. Well, how do you win the game? Asked Rich Dad. You buy several pieces of real estate and then you begin putting houses on them. Mike answered. How many houses? Said Rich Dad. Four, I said. Four greenhouses. Good, said Rich Dad. And after you have those four greenhouses, then what do? You turn those four greenhouses in and buy a red hotel, I said. And that is one of the formulas for great wealth, said Rich Dad. Right there on the game board of Monopoly, you have one of the best formulas for wealth in the world. It is a formula that many people have followed to become rich beyond their wildest dreams. You're kidding me, I said with a bit of disbelief, sorry. It can't be that simple. It is that simple, Rich Dad confirmed. 4 years I have taken the money I have earned in my business and simply bought real estate. Then what I live off the income from my real estate and continue to build my businesses. The more money I make from my businesses, the more money I invest in real estate. That is the formula of great wealth for many people. If it is so simple, why don't more people do it? Asked Mike. Because they don't do their homework, said Rich Dad. It is the only formula for wealth, I asked. No, said Rich Dad, but it is a very sound plan that has worked for many wealthy people for centuries. It worked for kings and queens of old, and it still works today. The difference is that today you don't have to be nobility to own real estate. So you have been playing the game of Monopoly in real life? Asked Mike. Rich Dad nodded. Yes, Rich Dad nodded. Years ago, when I was a kid playing Monopoly, I decided that my plan for great wealth was to build businesses and then have my businesses buy my real estate. And that is all I have been doing. Even when we had very little money, I was still going home and looking for real estate. Does it have to be real estate? I asked. No, said Rich Dad. But when you get older and begin to understand the power of corporations and tax laws, you will understand why real estate is one of the best investments. What else can you invest in? Asked Mike. Many people like stocks and bonds, said Rich Dad. Do you have stocks and bonds? I asked. Of course, said Rich Dad. But I have more real estate. Why? I asked. Well, it's because my banker will give me a loan to buy real estate, but he frowns on giving me a loan to buy stocks. So I can leverage my money better with real estate. And the tax laws favor real estate. But we're getting off the point. What is the point? I asked. The point is, you get rich at home, not at work, said Rich Dad. I really want you to understand that I don't care if you buy real estate or stocks or bonds or build a business. I do care what you understand that most people do not get rich at work. You get rich at home by doing your homework. I got the lesson, I said. So when you finish working here at the restaurant, where do you go next? Glad you asked, said Rich Dad. Come on, let's get in my car and take a ride. I'll show you where I go after work is done. A few minutes later, we arrived at a large tract of land with row after row of houses on the land. This is 20 acres of prime real estate, Rich Dad said, as he pointed to the land. Prime real estate, I said cynically. I may have been only 12 years old, but I knew a long rent neighborhood when I saw one. Oh, I knew a low rent neighborhood when I saw one. This place looks terrible. Well, let me explain something to you, said Rich Dad. Think of these houses as those green houses on the Monopoly board. Can you see that? Mike and I nodded slowly, doing our best to stretch our imaginations. The houses were not the neat, clean greenhouses on the Monopoly board. So where is the big red hotel? We asked almost simultaneously. It's coming, said Rich Dad. It's coming, but it's not going to be a real red hotel. Over the next few years, our little town will grow out in this direction. The city has announced plans to locate the new airport on the other side of this property. So these houses and land will be between the town and the airport, I asked. You got it, said Rich Dad. Then when the time is right, I will tear down all these rental houses and convert this land into a light industrial park. And then I will control one of the most valuable pieces of land in this town. Then what will you do? Mike said. I will follow the same formula, said Rich Dad. I'll buy more greenhouses and then, when the time is right, turn them into red hotels or light industrial parks or apartment houses or whatever the city needs at that time. I'm not a very smart man, but I know how to follow a successful plan. I work hard and I do my homework. When Mike and I were 12 years old, Rich Dad had begun his move to become one of the richest men in Hawaii. Not only had he already purchased this piece of industrial land, he had also purchased a piece of prime beachfront property. Utilizing the same formula, at the age of 34, he was making his move from being an obscure businessman to becoming a powerful, rich businessman. He had been doing his homework. In Rich Dad Poor Dad, Rich Dad's lesson number one was that the rich do not work for money. Instead, the rich focus on having their money work for them. As a young boy, I will always remember the impact of comparing the lesson from the game board of Monopoly to the lessons in real life. With my rich dad and many others very wealthy industrials, their wealth was really gained in what Rich Dad called doing their homework. For me, the idea that wealth was gained at home and not at work was a powerful lesson from my rich dad. My real dad brought a lot of work home, but he did very little homework. Once I returned from Vietnam in 1973, I immediately signed up for a real estate investment course I saw advertised on television. The course cost me $385 and has made my wife and me millionaires. The income from the real estate was bought using the formula taught by that course bought us our but sorry, the income from the real estate we bought using the formula taught by that course bought us our freedom. My wife and I never need to work again because of the passive income coming in from our real estate investment. So that $385 course has paid me back in something far more important than money. The information gained from that course has bought my wife and me something far more important than job security. It has bought me financial security and financial freedom. We worked hard and we also did our homework. As my rich dad said while playing Monopoly with Mike and me, you don't get rich at home, you get rich at. Sorry. As my rich dad said while playing Monopoly with Mike and me, you don't get rich at work, you get rich at home.